Hey there, Podcast Aquanauts. It's your host, Casey here. If you're an avid collector of quotes and witticisms, you may have heard of the famous description of America's national park system by author Wallace Stegner. He called the masterminding of the national park system by conservationists like John Muir and politicians such as Teddy Roosevelt to be the best idea we ever had. Absolutely American, absolutely democratic. They reflect us at our best rather than our worst. Across more than 430 sites, the National Park System safeguards more than 84 million acres of wild spaces as part of the natural heritage of all Americans, today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. To be sure, there are some amazing national parks, but for many of us, sites like Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Zion, or even the Great Smoky Mountains may be hours of driving away. Many are absolutely worth the trip, but they're not necessarily convenient. Really, if you're jonesing for a bit of nature in your life, you do far better to look to your local state parks. Across the country, there are just shy of 10,000 designated state parks, according to the National Association of State Park Directors. Combined, these preserve more than 20 million acres of land and attract 867 million visitors every year. Despite the name, these state-protected spaces offer the same quality of vistas and opportunities to recreate or relax as those found in national parks. And for most of us, a state park is often much, much easier to access. In this episode of the podcast, I popped the studio dive cage on a trailer and trucked down the road to visit Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park, one of the dozens of state parks in Tennessee. There, I connected with a park manager and a representative from this show's sponsor, the Tennessee Conservationist, the official magazine of Tennessee state parks. Together, we explored what Old Stone Fort has to offer, discussed the astounding biodiversity of the nearby Duck River, and made the case for why you should add a trip to a state park onto the itinerary the next time you visit the aquarium. Anyway, this episode's not going to start itself, so on with the podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us for a special on-the-road episode of the Podcast Aquatic, the official podcast of the Tennessee Aquarium. I am sitting on top of a museum. Look, I guess it's a museum, yeah. And you're probably going to hear some noises in the background that you don't normally hear from the inside of the studio dive cage. That's because we are actually in Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park here just outside of Manchester, Tennessee. Are we in Manchester, Tennessee?
Basically, yes, it is.
I should go ahead and introduce the man behind the voice. This is Keith. I don't actually know what your last name is.
My name is Keith Wimberly.
And Keith, what is your job here at the park?
So I'm the park manager here. I oversee all the operations of the park. 3 park rangers and 5 maintenance staff, 2 clerical positions, and then we have a 50 site campground and 702 acres, and we oversee Short Spring State Natural Area. So I'm over all that stuff.
It sounds really busy, and I was just talking with another one of our guests for today's episode, Stephanie Chance, who is the conservation manager at the Tennessee Aquarium and a former guest on the podcast. You were on with us talking about mussels about 8 months ago?
Yeah, I think so. I will talk mussels any chance you give me, Casey.
It was 9 months ago because it was Galentine's Day. That's right. It was our Galentine's Day mussel special. But I was telling Stephanie earlier that being a park ranger is something that I really wanted to do when I was a kid. It's up there with like firefighter and astronaut on my list of childhood dream jobs. What is the reality of being a park ranger versus that childhood dream that maybe some of us have? Keith, what does your job entail? Like, what does your day-to-day look like, and does it live up to whatever expectations you had before you got hired?
As the park manager, it's a little different than a park ranger position. I was a park ranger for 10 years or 14 years before becoming a park manager. So park rangers get to have a little bit more fun than park managers do. But no day is the same. We say that park rangers wear many hats, and we do. It can be anywhere from giving us a school group program, or doing a law enforcement issue, or rescuing somebody that's lost, or taking care of somebody that's hurt, or so no day's the same. So it does have some glamour, but there's also the bad sides to just like anything else. But definitely a dream job for anybody.
Well, I mean, who could beat your office? I mean, your office is a beautiful, beautiful place. Like I said, we're here at Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park, and the last member of our group here today is Whit Gardner. You are the marketing and subscription manager for the Tennessee Conservationist, which is the official magazine of Tennessee State Parks. And I know that because I've had to say that as part of the sponsorship plug for this show for a lot of episodes at this point. But Whit, you're joining us today because we thought, what better way to celebrate the partnership between the magazine and the show and the aquarium than to actually record in the middle of one of the state parks here in Tennessee. And we're going to get into how many state parks there are and all the different experiences you can have in the state parks. But first of all, Whit, thank you for joining us and offering up the magazine's perspective on our partnership.
Thanks, Casey. We could not be more excited to be sponsoring the Podcast Aquatic in partnership with the Tennessee Aquarium. Our relationship and history with the aquarium goes back to your all's founding in the early 90s when you opened. We were there covering it. And there have been many, many, many contributors from the aquarium, including yourself, over the years. So we just felt the partnership was natural. We are both very invested in telling conservation stories of all kinds in the magazine, but of course, your all's conservation of Tennessee's incredible biodiversity in our rivers, our waterways, our watersheds. So yeah, I just couldn't be more thrilled to be here.
Well, I mean, and again, what better place to possibly come and do a celebration of that partnership than into the state parks that you represent and that are protecting the wild spaces that are home to so many of those animals that we're going to talk about in the course of this episode, which is why Stephanie's here. Stephanie, we're going to talk about an important waterway that you might be able to hear in the background, which is the Duck River, which is one of the most biologically diverse rivers in the state of Tennessee. Well, actually, not just the state of Tennessee, the entire country.
In the world.
That's right.
In the world, even.
In the world, yes.
But we'll get to that here in a second. So, Whit, before we deviate too much or depart from the start of this and talking about the magazine, can you talk a little bit about the kinds of things that you can read about and what kind of topics do you cover in the magazine?
Sure. Let me start with our founding. So the Tennessee Conservationist was founded alongside Tennessee State Parks in 1937. We actually predate the parks by a few months because it takes a little bit of time to produce a magazine. So we were founded in February. The parks were founded in May of that year. So we have a nearly 90-year legacy as a publication of telling the stories of conservation here across the state. It makes us incredibly special to have an archive and a repository of that kind of information. It also, I think, shows Tennessee's commitment to preserving and protecting our wild places, our native species, our history, our culture. Some of your listeners may know that Tennessee has three very distinct regions geographically that shape the state in amazing ways.
The grand divisions of Tennessee.
Yes, the grand divisions. So east, middle, and west. And our magazine covers all of that. And we do highlight our parks. There's so many fascinating things that are going on conservation-wise across the subjects that I just listed. So yeah, we're here to connect people with what's happening in our parks and in our state on a much deeper level. And we do that with the help of contributors such as yourselves. Our photography is all donated. The magazine very much operates in the spirit of volunteerism. So everybody that donates their writing and their photography, they're doing that because they care about the work being done in conservation in Tennessee and particularly in our parks. I think that makes us incredibly special, and it's something that I think every Tennessean should be proud of.
So the connective tissue between the magazine and what we do at the aquarium, especially for me in the communications department of the aquarium, and through things like this podcast, the videos that we create, the stories that we write, is that, and Stephanie, you and I were talking about this on the way up, that you don't care about things unless you know about them. Like it's crucial to all conservation that you have an awareness of something, because if you don't know about it, it's impossible to care about it. And if you don't care about it, you're not going to want to protect it.
Yeah, just the more people that are out on the Duck River, whether they're fishing, canoeing, kayaking, boating, hiking, bird watching, any number of many ways to enjoy the Duck River, any of the Tennessee rivers. You don't really appreciate something, care for it, connect with it, grow to love it. Appreciate it as a part of your heritage and, with pride that you live here. It is just a beautiful state full of beautiful rivers, beautiful state parks. And the more we're all out there, the more we remember that, love that, and want to protect them for future generations.
Well, since we're talking about conservation, Keith, I'd love to get your take on this about how important and how threaded into the operation of the park conservation efforts are. So how does conservation factor into the operation of the park? Are you thinking about conservation in how you deal with things or how you make services available to the public? What role does conservation play in the park as far as your role is concerned?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways parks are here for conservation, whether it be conserving land or preserving historical sites or whatever the park is associated with. But here at Old Stone Fort, you mentioned the Duck River, the most biodiverse in North America and one of the top 5 in the world. It starts here in Coffee County and flows through the park before at its headwaters. So that is something that we're always mindful of in anything we do, along with the archaeological site here at the park. But I think it's probably a mindset in every park ranger's mind and every park employee's mind is conservation. And every park is great, but every park doesn't have a resource like the Duck River. So certain parks have features that are more recognized, I guess you would say, that is more important. But like I said, I think as a park ranger, just conservation should be something that's in the forefront of everyone's mind.
Going to a state park to me kind of feels a little bit like going to an art museum. Like I can't imagine anybody going to an art museum and seeing a beautiful masterwork by one of the Dutch masters and thinking, I want to throw some mustard on that. I really wish that I could just take a Sharpie and just draw all over that. I think there's when you're exposed to beauty like the beauty that surrounds us here as we're sitting literally in the middle of the park, I can't imagine experiencing that in person and not feeling some sense of, or a desire maybe to protect it and conserve it. And so in that sense, I think that you're contributing to the conservation of these wild spaces just by making them accessible, by giving the public access to really beautiful places like this, like the falls that you can kind of hear in the background of the Duck River, seeing these leaves that you can kind of hear in the background falling on top of the museum. I think by being exposed to that, you feel an inherent desire to want to safeguard it.
Oh, absolutely, and that's we try to encourage visitors with education in a lot of ways. If they're not taking care of the resource or abusing it, we try to educate people on, why it should be preserved and why they shouldn't be doing certain activities and things like that. But most people have a great appreciation for state parks and national parks too, obviously. But yeah, I'm the same way, or have the same mindset as you. When you go to a park, it's like, how can you not just get a great sense of place to, if you will, to want to protect it?
Yeah, I like to. Again, Stephanie, we're talking about this on the way up. Like being out in these wild spaces, it's just my happy place.
Yeah. Can you write poems on the spot, Casey? I know I have friends who could write a haiku right now as they're sitting here, but we keep talking about how it's a beautiful river. We're sitting in the beautiful park, but literally what we're looking at is a beautiful blue sky with birds in the sky. There are leaves falling around us. There's beautiful fall colors. There's just a little bit of chill in the air. There's a sound of the wind. People laughing, people walking by.
Someone was doing yoga at one of the
there's
the overlooks.
Yoga going on, like just being here, if I could paint a picture or write a poem for you right now, listeners, I sure would.
Yeah, you're hearing some of that wind in the mics probably, and I would apologize for it, except for that I feel like it's necessary ambiance for the episode. So, oh, there's apparently a leaf on my shoulder, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm being told. Okay.
Beautiful part of fall, right? Too, is hearing that wind.
And there was a yellow jacket that was buzzing around the mics not too long ago. I'm glad that has decided to go ahead and
I appreciate that flying off.
But anyway, so Keith, we are here in Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park. I've done a terrible job, as is usual for me, of backing into the point of the conversation, which is to give people an idea of what this park is, what it encompasses, what makes it special. So how large is Old Stone Fort, and what are some things that people can see and experience here that make this a unique park insofar as it's distinct from the other 61 state parks that are in Tennessee?
Yeah, so Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park encompasses about 782 acres, but the park was established, and the main feature of the park is what's referred to as the Old Stone Fort. It's a 2,000-year-old Native American mound site built by Woodland Indians, again, in ancient times, to set up a special meeting ritual area. The name fort is a misnomer. When the first settlers came to this area, they saw a big field of about 50 acres surrounded by mound walls, and they just assumed it was a defensive structure. But after many years of archaeological inspection and different excavations and things like that, it's come to be more understood as a ceremonial gathering place. The entrance complex mounds, which are right behind us here, actually it's two parallel mounds that actually point at the summer solstice sunrise. So that's pretty awesome to come out here on the first day of summer, just like Native Americans did 2,000 years ago.
I mean, it sounds like Stonehenge.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, many different sites are aligned with celestial events around the world, but Old Stone Fort is one of them. So it's really cool, and it's been measured. It's within 3/10 of a degree of direct line.
Wow.
And it's pretty amazing. They weren't necessarily worshiping the sun, but honoring it for the summertime when the animals were active and the plants were growing and things that would help them prepare for the entire year, especially have substance during the winter and all that. But for the rest of the park, there's also the Little Duck River here in the park, and the Little Duck and the Duck flank the Old Stone Fort of the Native American enclosure on each side, and there's waterfalls on both rivers. There's also in the park we have around 10 miles of trails. There's one main interpretive trail around the enclosure that we definitely encourage people to hike when they come. It's a 1.4 mile loop around the site. You see both rivers, all the waterfalls. You go along the entire length of the mound site.
The falls are beautiful.
Oh yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we experienced those earlier, and boy, they are just stunning.
Yes, just right down from the museum is the first one. On the Duck River is the Blue Hole Falls, and then a little farther down is Big Falls. And then over on the Little Duck River, we have a series of waterfalls we call Step Falls or Little Falls. So yes, it's a very beautiful place. And then one of my favorite places is down where the two rivers come together. But like I said, I encourage everyone to take the enclosure trail. There's also 12 interpretive signs on that trail that helps explain the site in more detail and such.
It seems like a lot of this stuff is very concentrated. Like you could come here and not, without having to move too terribly far, experience a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, the main trail system is here behind the museum. The museum's here, and again, this is the main reason the park is here. So it is concentrated largely in one area. We do have other parts of the park. There's a couple of trails that you access from a different trailhead site campground that's really popular. But yeah, the main focus, the main features of the park are here in this area. museum. We also have a gift shop with really cool swag and stuff.
It's very easy access and seems like an easy walking trail too.
Yes, it's relatively flat. There's a couple inclines, but yeah, it's pretty easy trail for the most part.
And there were some awesome T-shirts. You mentioned the swag. There actually are some very cool T-shirts that if I could convince my wife to let me expend the money, I might buy one before we leave.
I was eyeing at least 3 of them.
So, Stephanie, the falls that we've been talking about, and Whit, I will bring you back into the conversation eventually. I am sorry, but
No, you're fine.
Stephanie, those falls that we were talking about that Keith mentioned. When you're talking about biological diversity, I know that from the time that we've spent out in the field, when we're talking about stuff like our brook trout reintroduction, the sites that TWRA looks at when we're trying to find places to reintroduce brook trout often look for natural obstacles that sort of isolate a stream from potential invasive species or other predators.
Natural barriers such as waterfalls.
Yeah. So, what role do those waterfalls and things like that play to the Duck River being as biodiverse as it is?
It can be a barrier to invasive species coming in. There are certainly some coming into the Duck River. Around the waterfalls here, the first thing I noticed too is the rock bluff right adjacent to the river. It seems to naturally narrow the river here. And that's important for freshwater mussels because you know that the river is stable here. It's not actively shifting to the right or left as it meanders. It's been stable here for a while due to the rock bluffs, really on both sides. So you know you might have a really good mussel bed there. The substrate's not shifting too much. They won't get washed away too easily. So it's a nice feature that allows there to be a lot of diversity, different species of freshwater mussels all in one site. And now I can't speak to the mussels that are actually on the park. There is some bedrock here too, which is not the best freshwater mussel habitat, but it certainly allows for the river to have been stable for quite some time.
So why are we talking about mussels? What is it about the duck that makes the mussel population so significant? How many mussel species can you find in the duck?
It is one of, I would say, 2 species or 2 rivers in Tennessee that are the most speciose for freshwater mussels. I was researching how many mussels are in the Duck River, and it ranges from 50 to 70 depending on what you're reading, and I suppose how many species have been described in the last little bit, but there are solidly over 50 species of freshwater mussels in the Duck River. I've told you before, Casey, I'm from Kansas, and I love Kansas very much, and unfortunately, though, there's only 50 species of mussels in the entire state, so to have that whole amount, a number of diversity of mussels in one river is amazing.
Whit, does it surprise you to hear that? Did you already know that there was that proliferation of mussel species?
I did, but it's because I'm kind of obsessed with the Duck River. I'm a huge paddler, and I spend most of my time paddling on the Harpeth and on the Duck. So I have had the pleasure of experiencing these mussels live and up close. Speaking of conservation, when you're on the river, we always encourage people, we want people to see and experience, but we also want people to let the mussels do their thing, observe them, and go on.
They're not good to eat either.
They're not good to eat, and they're there filtering that water, which is incredibly important. The Duck River, not here at Old Stone Fort, the water is much clearer, but it does have a nickname called the Muddy Duck in Middle Tennessee.
It's nutrient rich.
Mud is not bad. There's nothing wrong with that mud, but that's also what those mussels are there interacting with. So yeah, I can't say enough about how incredible this place is that we're sitting. And I wanted, just before we leave, like parks and conservation one of the reasons we're here not at Old Stone Fort is not just because of the Duck River, but also because this park is, Keith, I believe it has the Platinum Go Green certification.
We now have the Diamond.
The Diamond.
So there's
okay.
a new level this past year, and we have the.
Oh, we need to explain what this is. What is this certification?
I would love for Keith to talk about like what the Diamonds, like first of all, what the Go Green program is in Tennessee State Parks, and then I'd love for him to explain like how big of a deal it is for you to have a Diamond certification.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that. So the Go Green with Us program is something that Tennessee State Parks started 5, 6, 8 years ago, something like that. But encouraging just energy conservation and any type of
sustainability.
Sustainability, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
This is why we brought you along.
Yes.
I'm coming up with words for him so that he can for me.
Yes. So it encourages any type of sustainability in parks, whether that be energy efficiency or conservation efforts or changing lighting for on the outside for encourage dark sky viewing and things like that. But there's many categories of things that you can do for sustainability, recycling. The way the program works is there's certain options. There's prerequisites for each category that you have to meet first, and then you can do wild cards to earn more points. And then there's a tiered grading system, if you will, depending on the size of the park and what different features each park has, and you accrue points by the multitude of sustainability efforts you're doing, and then depending on how many you get, that's the level you get. So quite a few parks met Platinum, I'd say over half if I remember correctly. So they came up with a different level. So last year with Diamond, and we actually met Diamond as well. So
is it just a matter of just having bragging rights within the park system? Do other park managers all get together for a poker game and compare the lapel pins for who has the Platinum versus the Diamond? Or what's the impetus for participating in these programs and earning those points to get that higher level of certification?
I guess there's a little bit of competition to it, but mainly it's just our focus is sustainability and caring for the environment. So it just goes along perfectly with Tennessee State Parks and what we stand for.
Walking the talk.
Yeah, I guess you could say that for sure.
So Diamond is the highest level
Currently.
I'm sensing currently?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Yes,
That's a really
thank you.
big
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So what's after that? I know in the recording industry, you would have to go double diamond and triple diamond. So what's after that?
You'll have to ask Kelsey Davis. She's over the Go Green with Us
Sounds
program.
like Keith is the one setting the standard here. So he's going to define the next level this coming year, I bet.
Well, I must say, and before I get too far into it without bragging, but I don't do the stuff. I do some of it. I help with it. I lead it, but I have rangers that take care of this. And Marley Gibbs is our ranger here over our Go Green program. She works really, really hard at it, and all staff is involved. But
it's called delegating.
Yes.
You're good at delegating.
And I'll brag, but I don't want to take the credit because
it's great to have great teams.
It's not me. Yes, I have an excellent team.
Sure. Well, now I mentioned earlier that there are 62 state parks in Tennessee, that is a tremendous number. And to give you an idea, that is more than any state around us that I could find based on the Google foo that I wielded last night to try and think up questions for this episode. So when you talk about 62 state parks, on the way up here, we were talking, Stephanie and I were talking about the fact that because there are so many state parks, for comparison's sake, you mentioned Kansas. Kansas, I looked up, has 28 state parks. So less than half the number of state parks versus Tennessee, which is more of a celebration of how many we have as opposed to how few there are in other states. But when you talk about that many state parks in a state that's half as big as Kansas, it means that there's a pretty comprehensive map of access points, right, for people in Tennessee. And Stephanie, you had some good points to make about the fact that there are so many and what that means for Tennesseans and visitors to Tennessee having access to those wild spaces.
It's so amazing. We talked about the grand divisions of the state earlier, and no matter which of the grand divisions you live in, there's a state park probably within an hour and a half. I'm making up numbers
1 hour.
here.
There's
Within 1 hour of where you live. And, you know, my favorite state park is the closest one to where I live because I want to visit it, you know, often and frequently.
Wherever that is.
Wherever that is. And, you know, I was telling Casey on the way here that state parks aren't free in every state. Sometimes and it's usually a small, and it goes towards conservation, which is a wonderful thing. But it's not true that in every state you can go there and have free access to your parks. And
Tennessee is one of only 7 states
one
that are
of
free.
7. It's really amazing and something we take for granted. We have such great access, and, you know, I like to challenge myself to try to visit every one of the state parks. And y'all are making it hard for me because you just added 2 last month, which is awesome.
Well, yes, Governor Lee and even the governors before him have been very supportive of Tennessee state parks, and but Governor Lee especially has added. I think we start with, if I remember correctly, I think we had 57 maybe when he started. But
that sounds right. I feel like we have about 5 more now.
But his goal with it, which before he leaves office next year, is to have 70. So there's several already in the chain that getting started and development and things like that. So there's several, but like I said, he wants 70 by the end of next year. So
Can I piggyback on that for a moment?
You don't have to ask permission, Whit. It's okay just to
Okay. Well, I don't want
to sound off.
I know you'll cut this, but I don't want to interrupt anybody.
I'm keeping that in.
Okay. Fine. My mom will be pleased. So yes, there's it's 70 by 27. We have 8 coming in 2026, hopefully. Most of those have been appropriated or named. There's a few that are still trying to get figured out. There's several things I want to take a moment to say about this. One, the massive move and lift that it takes for us to stand up parks in this state, it does not happen without partnership at all. We are blessed to have so many partnership organizations across the state who work with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, otherwise known as TDEC, 10 Green Land Conservancy, the Nature Conservancy of Tennessee, the Land Trust of Tennessee, partners like yourself, you know, the Tennessee Aquarium, and many, many, many others who are doing their specialized work in their specialized area across divisions within TDEC to then stand these parks up to make them free and accessible to all Tennesseans. Stephanie mentioned it, Keith mentioned it. It really cannot be touted enough that Tennessee has committed to making these special places open to everybody. You can just come in here, right? And not just that, but we have an initiative called Access 2030, which is our accessibility initiative. What that means is we are committed to, by 2030, being the most accessible state park system that we can be, but hopefully in the country. That includes things like all-terrain wheelchairs. That includes accessible paved trails. That includes adult size changing tables in our state park bathrooms.
Colorblind viewfinders?
Colorblind viewfinders. There's now a tactile trail being, it's actually being videoed today up at Paris Landing State Park. And many other things that are going on.
That's amazing to hear.
Yeah. And then, of course, the Tennessee conservationists. So, you may be hearing us say, man, there's 62 state parks. We're adding 8, in the coming year. We're trying to meet Governor Lee's goal of having 70 state parks before the end of his administration. You might be thinking to yourself, how on earth am I going to keep up with all of that? And that's part of the Tennessee conservationist job. That's part of the magazine's job. We are a small but dedicated team of folks who are plugged into what's happening with our partners, what's happening in our parks, to bring Tennesseans their parks. the latest, the greatest, the conservation, the history. We're your connection point to that. And you can find us in print and digital. We come to your mailbox 6 times a year, and we are always there for you to access the digital magazine at tnconservationist.org.
I was about to say, what's that URL?
Yeah, the Tennessee Conservationist is committed, along with, our Go Green initiative and state parks, to making the most sustainable product that we can. So yeah, there's no reason to feel guilty about a subscription. There's no reason to feel guilty about giving a subscription.
The Tennessee Aquarium's podcast Aquatic is made possible by support from the Tennessee Conservationist, the official magazine of Tennessee state parks. Each issue is filled with fascinating stories about Tennessee's native species, rich history, and unique culture. It's also your guide to exploring state parks and planning your next outdoor adventure. Subscribe today at tnconservationist.org. So we, in talking about the Grand Divisions earlier and talking about how many state parks there are the Grand Divisions of Tennessee. If you're not familiar with that, if your mom was not a state history teacher like mine was, you may not have heard of them, but they are largely defined by geological changes that happen across the state. If you didn't grow up in Tennessee, I almost did it there. You tend to not say that you are a Tennessean. You tend to be very specifically saying, at least in where I'm from, that you are from East Tennessee. And I know that there are probably people in Nashville who call themselves Middle Tennesseans. So the interesting thing about that, though, is that because there are all of those changes that occur in the landscape between East and West, that means that the experiences you have in a park maybe out west, like Pickwick Landing, are completely different than the kind of experience that you would have somewhere in the east, like where we are with Booker T. Washington State Park, or
North Chick.
Or North Chick.
One of our newer state parks. Yeah, North Chickamauga Gorge State Park.
Or North Chickamauga Creek Gorge State Park.
Thank you, Keith.
But that would be considered Middle Tennessee.
This is why we brought you on.
Yeah, a great one in East Tennessee that I love is Roan Mountain State Park.
Absolutely.
Everybody knows Roan Mountain State Park. So gorgeous.
And we were talking on the way traveling to and from Knoxville to school, where I went to school in Murfreesboro, south of Nashville. I always passed by Frozen Head State Park, which I did not realize how beautiful it was until I looked at it on Google Photos on the drive over here. And I was disappointed to find out that it was not because of some decapitated pioneer's head that was found in the woods, that it was actually just because of snow on top of a mountain. Am I right, Keith?
That's correct.
So
Yes.
Even if you're traveling within the confines of Tennessee, you can have just an incredible diversity of experiences by going to state parks in different parts of the state. I wanted to know, though, Keith, I don't know, we talked about competition. I don't want you to feel like you have to shine too bright of a spotlight on some of your competitors, but what would be a favorite state park for you to visit that is not Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park?
Well, as Stephanie mentioned, Roan Mountain is my next favorite park.
And where is that?
So it's extreme northeast Tennessee in Carter County. If you're familiar with Elizabethton, it's just, I guess it would be east of Elizabethton, but it's very near Carver's Gap on the North Carolina line, close to Boone, North Carolina, within 30 minutes, I think. But it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous place up there. Locally, I would say Tim's Ford's a neat park. It's more of a recreation park with the lake, but they have a lot of cool stuff going on there as well. I started my career at the Bicentennial Capitol Mall State Park. I was one of the original rangers that started there in 1996.
Right in downtown Nashville.
Right in downtown Nashville. It's it's downtown Nashville, but it's an awesome little 19-acre park that highlights Tennessee history as for the 200th birthday of the state.
I remember that 200th birthday back in '96.
Yeah, it was a fantastic gathering, but it's a neat park that, if you like history, that's in Tennessee history, that's the place to go for sure. So those are just some of the main ones that come to mind for myself.
And Roan Mountain, pretty sure, Stephanie, that's within spitting distance of where we do some of our brook trout releases.
Maybe.
It's
Maybe in the Doe
it's
River?
pretty close because we're in Upper Cherokee National Forest, right on the North Carolina border. That's pretty close.
You're looking at the Kansas girl. I have been in Tennessee for 20 years working on conservation, and it has been amazing, but I do still struggle a bit with geography.
Well, it is close. I'll tell you, because Elizabethton was like the local community. That was like the city that was the closest to where we were going out into the woods, and it is absolutely beautiful.
It's known for its azalea blooms, right? Sorry, Keith.
Rhododendron.
Rhododendron.
Yes.
Right. See, a little challenge still.
Yeah. But the Doe River goes right through Roan Mountain, and I know has the trout in it, so that may be.
Yeah.
We've done a few streams up there. Hamilton Creek, I think, was one. Sugar Cove Creek is another one. They're all just beautiful. I've talked endlessly on this show about how much I love the mountain laurel. It's my favorite. I always call it a tree. My wife corrects me and says it's a shrub. I think that's not the right word to describe how beautiful it is. Shrub does not convey how beautiful the mountain laurel is when it's in full bloom.
You can access a story about mountain laurel in our digital archives.
That's a wonderful plug from Whit, who I'm now going to turn to and ask, Whit, you, in the course of your duties, I'm sure, have traveled to many a state park here in Tennessee. What are your favorite state parks? And if it's, other than Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park, which is clearly your favorite, while Keith is sitting 6 feet away from you.
So I was actually asked this question when I applied for my position. I
love that. I'm going to steal that interview question.
I'm going to say this. Asking me what my favorite state park is like asking me who's my favorite child. And I can't answer that, but what I can tell you is that Roan Mountain is on my list. I've never been. And there's many that I still haven't been to. If I had to choose a park that I would encourage folks to go to, because I think it has kind of a little something for everyone, in a way. Right up on the Tennessee-Kentucky border near Jamestown is Pickett. And Pickett Civilian Conservation Corps State Memorial Park, Keith?
I think that's right.
You just heard me mention the Civilian Conservation Corps. That was a program during Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration to put Americans to work during the Great Depression. And many of our Tennessee state parks have a rich Civilian Conservation Corps history. Pickett in particular does.
Norris Dam State Park comes to mind for that.
Yes, and you can still stay in cabins that were constructed by the Civilian Conservation Corps, not only in Pickett, but also at Pickwick Landing, Montgomery Bell,
Fall Creek
Cumberland
Falls.
Mountain, Fall Creek Falls. There's a bunch. And then Pickett also has the Hazard Cave Trail, which is you just have to see it. And then there's also the lake there at Pickett, but it is not like a lake. It's not a lake that allows motorboating. You can rent kayaks or canoes and paddle under a natural arch. And there's also more hiking there. Pickett has a certified international dark sky. That is, I believe, the only certified national dark sky in the state.
Is Fall Creek Falls not? I know Fall Creek Falls is a really popular site for people who are into stargazing and astrophotography, but...
And a lot of our parks do have exceptional dark skies. The reason I'm mentioning the certification is because there's an organization called Dark Sky International, and I believe they're the ones that do that certification, and I know that Pickett has it. So yeah, it's just an incredible place to really experience water, hiking, caves, dark skies. I have camped there. There was definitely a raccoon in the tree. There is wildlife all around. So yeah, Pickett is a very special place, as is Old Stone Fort. They're really all special. And before I hush, I do want to point out some of our historical parks. What that means is that those parks are there to conserve history that happened there, like Sycamore Shoals. That's another one in East Tennessee that has Revolutionary and French and Indian War history. Cordell Hull Birthplace State Park also has a cave, but it's the birthplace of Cordell Hull, who's a very famous man in Tennessee. We have David Crockett State Park.
His friends call him Davy, just to be clear.
Well, and we have Davy Crockett Birthplace State Park, which was...
Actually, they renamed it David as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
That's what his mama called him.
Yeah.
right?
When he was
so
in
there's,
trouble.
There's
Oh, he was in
all
trouble.
there's all these other parks as well that if you're thinking to yourself, you're listening to this and you're going, man, maybe paddling or hiking might not quite be my thing, but I'm really interested in history. I'm really interested in historical reenactment. I'm interested in crafts. I'm interested in historic fashion. You can find all those sorts of things at Tennessee state parks.
You mentioned Cordell Hall. Very near there, I think within an hour, is Alvin C. York State Park. So it's pretty amazing to think how close those two huge figures in history were located or lived. Of course, they're similar time period. I
Similar
guess.
time periods,
Yeah.
yes.
So
And Alvin C.
Pretty crazy.
York being the World War I hero who received the Medal of Honor for his service.
A state park can take a lot of different forms. It can be designed to enshrine a lot of different kinds of experiences, and it's neat that of the dozens and dozens that are available and more to come here in the park system, the spectrum is wide and varied. So before we talk too much about the last thing
I'm
I want
sorry,
to talk
let me
about,
mention real quick, sorry. Another historical park is Red Clay, the last meeting point of the Cherokees, but very near there, a new park that's being established. It's currently a county park in Meigs County, is the Cherokee Removal State Park. So I don't know if I was supposed to give all that out, but it is becoming a state park as well.
So they are going back and forth on the name, whether it's going to be Cherokee Memorial Park or Cherokee Removal Memorial Park, but it is in Meigs County, and it is the state is working with the eastern band of the Cherokee tribe. And that's another example, Keith, of just how we're conserving and protecting and preserving as best we can, honoring the people who came before. So I think that's it's a big deal, and it should be shared, because Red Clay is just an incredible place. Yeah.
Stephanie, do you have a favorite state park before we start to close out the episode by talking about the state park versus national park? I'm going to call it a debate, but there probably isn't really much of a debate. But do you have a favorite state park here in Tennessee?
Ooh. I also struggle. I love all of the state parks. They're so beautiful. I did put some of my favorites here that I have been to. Pickwick Landing that we've mentioned. Another one that we haven't mentioned is Rock Island State Park. Oh my goodness, gorgeous, huge, wonderful waterfalls. Montgomery Bell State Park. If you're in the center of the state, Middle Tennessee, it's a great park to see. But really, truly, again, my favorites are the ones that are closest to me. I told Casey this the other day. In 2020, we were all feeling a little hemmed in, if you will, a little like we were too much in our homes. I was not. And, they are important for, I'll just say, mental health. All the anxiety we were all experiencing. My husband and I took our dog to state parks almost every evening in 2020, and in some ways it was the most beautiful year that we shared together and in the state parks. At the time, we were living close to Booker T. Washington State Park and Harrison Bay State Park. We also did visit Red Clay State Park, and they were just a tremendous gift to us to be able to just enjoy the natural beauty around us. And everywhere around us were just other people, seeking that community, that communion, if you will, with nature. And it's just so important to us. And the fact that within an hour you can be at any state park and just feel a part of something larger, that we're all part of this grander ecosystem. And yeah.
Yeah, if you were to come and visit the aquarium in Chattanooga, within about an hour and a half's drive, I think there's something like 14 state parks that you can get to within an hour and a half, based on, again, Google Foo, which is pretty incredible. I mean, and a lot of those that we've mentioned are on that list. So if you were to come and visit the aquarium as part of your trip itinerary, you could very easily thread through a day trip to one or multiple state parks and have a really great experience that ties together in a very nice, neat way the experience of seeing these wild spaces that we are trying to replicate at the aquarium, and seeing the wild cousins of the living collection that we have on display at the aquarium. Now, I would like to talk about the state park versus national park debate. In Tennessee, and there probably is, I'm making this more competitive than it is. And I think that's probably because, as we were talking about this coming over here, Stephanie, I used the comparison between, say, the NCAA, so the college level athletics, versus a national sports league. And I think it would be awfully easy, especially when the one national park in Tennessee is the Great Smoky Mountains, which is the most popular national park in the country, 12 million visitors annually. It's a lot of people. You might think it's Yosemite, you might think it's Yellowstone. It's not. It's Great Smoky Mountains. It's my backyard, basically growing up, was Great Smoky Mountains. It's the park that I went to probably the most, and it is definitely the root of my happiness as far as the natural world is concerned. But it could be very easy to think of state parks as being somehow lower tier or lesser experiences. Just in the time that I've spent at Old Stone Fort State Park, the time that I've gone to Seven Island State Birding Park up near Knoxville, Pickwick Landing, I mean, all of these places that we've been talking about, I can tell you that that's not the case at all, that those experiences are every bit on par with what you experience in a national park. But I'm curious, Keith, do you ever get that feeling from people that they see state parks as somehow lesser than or different than national parks? And how do you get them to see that there is just as much specialness and distinctive things to see in state parks as you could see in a national park like the Great Smoky Mountains?
I think it depends on the individual. I mean, I think there are some that probably think, oh, it's just a state park and it's not a national park. But, the federal government can't protect all things, so state parks or states need to take on things like that. I will say, we just come through the longest government shutdown in history, and national parks were closed, but state parks were not. And that's a place that people can almost always come to visit state parks instead of national. So I think it just depends on the purpose or the person, but state parks are just as good. I consider a lot of times I've described Roan Mountain as the Smoky Mountains in a state park form. So they're typically smaller, but still packed with a lot of awesome things going on. And one interesting thing is that Old Stone Fort almost became a national park.
Really?
There was actually legislation proposed in Congress to make Old Stone Fort a national park, and I don't remember exactly how it failed or whatever, but there was actually legislation to do that. So again, there is much impact for a lot of state parks as any national park.
Well, and to think about them, again, I'm probably creating more of a sense of antagonism or competition where there really probably isn't any. But I think to think of them in terms of them being tiers of quality is to ignore what we've talked about a lot in this conversation, which is really the access and the accessibility that state parks offer. Because you could be, we talked on this again, that very eventful, apparently, drive over here that provided
wonderful drive over
30% of the conversation has been based on the conversation you and I had on the way over. But if you're over in Memphis, I mean, you said this, I think, that the Great Smoky Mountains might as well be in another country. I mean, they're so far away from you.
Yeah.
So to think of state parks as being somehow lesser experiences is really to ignore the fact that a state park is probably your best and closest means of having a very special gateway to experiencing natural spaces that you would otherwise have to travel sometimes hundreds of miles to have.
Yeah, I don't know, the key word there for me is kind of, you said your state parks. They're they belong to all of us, all Tennesseans, and that's just it's touching to me, like they're ours. They're here for us. They're free resource. They're amazing.
I love that to end this episode on. So let's go ahead and work my way around the rooftop, thanking the guests for today's episode. Starting with Keith. Remind me of your last name again one more time.
Wimberly,
the park manager here at Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park near Manchester. Did we agree on that? It is
You can say it's in Manchester.
in Manchester.
Yeah.
Manchester, Tennessee, famous for the Bonnaroo Music Festival and for a 2,000-year-old misnomered fort that is you should come and experience. Next to you, across from me, is Whit Gardner, the marketing
and subscription manager for the Tennessee Conservationist, which is your official magazine of Tennessee state parks.
and the official sponsor of the podcast Aquatic. So next to you, thank you for that, is Stephanie Chance, who is the conservation manager at the Tennessee Aquarium. Thank you to all of you, to Whit, to Stephanie, and to Keith, for joining me on this beautiful fall day here in Old Stone Fort State Archaeological Park as we celebrate the park system and the partnership that exists between the Tennessee Conservationist magazine and the Tennessee Aquarium through the podcast Aquatic. Thank you all.
Thanks, Casey.
If you have an idea for a future episode of the podcast Aquatic, or a question for an expert like Stephanie, like Whit, or like Keith, email me at podcast@tnaqua.org. While you're online, leave us a rating or write us a review if you've got a little bit more time. Those are both free and easy ways to support the show and improve our reach with the algorithm. And in the meantime, go and visit a state park. Go online and look up a map of Tennessee's state park system. Find one that's probably within about an hour of you, and just go have an amazing experience. And while you're online, also go and visit the Tennessee Conservationist magazine, which is, again, tnconservationist.org. And in the meantime, until next time, remember that every drop matters.